Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me this podcast episode. Really appreciate it. How are you today?
I am fantastic. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to talk with you this morning.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. I'm super excited to learn more about your journey, how you end up being an entrepreneur and started your career. And obviously, you had like a lots of obstacles you had to go through in order to become who you are right now. So before
Yep.
that, I'd love to know more about like early stage of your life, like when you go to school, college life. Who's Matt used to be, and like are you introvert, extrovert? What type of what do you used to do?
Good question. So, my childhood and my upbringing was kind of standard, to be honest. I grew up in a decently well off family. Grew up on a 60-acre horse farm here in Western Pennsylvania. And I had a good childhood. But I'm also a middle child. I have two sisters, one older, one younger. And I was kind of like the black sheep of the family. I was the rebel, right? I was always the one doing things that my parents told me not to do, right? They would tell me not to do something. I would go do it 10 times over just because they said not to do it. Um, Graduated high school, and actually I did not go to college. I used to race professional motocross. So when I graduated high school, I actually went off to California and raced motorcycles for a living professionally until about 20 when I was involved in a really bad accident and basically ended up retiring. Took me a year
Wow.
and a half to recover, retired, came back to Pennsylvania. And at that point, my mentor brought me into his business basically as a partner. And I helped him grow that business, which is a motorcycle dealership group.
Mhm.
So obviously it fit right in. Um, and people knew me enough from my racing that we utilized that to kind of grow the dealership group. We ultimately ended up selling that. So that was kind of like my first foray into business. I knew that I didn't want to ever go to college. I knew that wasn't my thing. Just getting through high school for me was hard enough. I'll be 100% honest because it's not something I enjoyed, right?
Yeah.
And so that was really tough for me. And I knew college wasn't where I wanted to go, and I knew kind of business was where I wanted to be. I've always had a really good work ethic. I started working when I was 14 years old as a dishwasher in a local restaurant. So for
Mm.
me, like the working and the work ethic wasn't the problem. And so that was kind of my first foray into business. We sold that in 2006, pretty much right before the big financial crash. Here in the United States, which then ultimately went around the world. But
Yeah.
and from that point on is kind of when I started initially buying real estate and investing in real estate. I used that money to start buying my own real estate. For me at that point, it was more of just like a side piece. It wasn't my 100, it wasn't my main focus. I wasn't doing 100% of the time. I actually had started another business at that point, which was a digital marketing company, and grew
Mm.
that to be a very successful company till well through 2010 into 2011 when I got the big bright idea that I wanted to go do one last professional motocross race just to say that I did it in my 30s. Great idea, right? Um, which I did. And then I ended up breaking my back and my pelvis in the race. So it was a really
So
bad
while you are
injury.
racing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I did it in the first moto. I got my license back, no problem. Went out and qualified. Went out in the
Mm.
first moto and ended up, shattering two vertebrae. Broke my pelvis in the left side in two spots.
How
Compound
old were you
fractured
that
my
time?
right leg. I was 31.
31. Okay. And you
Yeah.
had like another accident like when you was 20, right?
Yeah, exactly. When I was
Yeah.
20. So there was, and I still rode all those years, but I just didn't
Yeah.
race anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, it was an 11-year gap between those two big accidents and
Mm.
injuries. But I was in ICU for a week. I was on bed rest for 3 months. Literally, I couldn't move. I was in bed. I couldn't move from the one position they had me propped in
Wow.
to allow myself to heal up. I was in a wheelchair for another 3, 4 months after that. Then I was on crutches. I mean, it was a year and a half recovery.
Wow.
It was absolutely insane. The problem is during that time, I couldn't go into the office and work. I had employees that were working for me. We had, about 30 to 35 clients that we worked with at the agency. We were losing them left and right because I wasn't there to
Mm.
run things. Employees weren't being managed well. Money wasn't being or bills weren't being paid because I wasn't there to oversee things. It was
Yeah.
just what I thought I had set up really well I actually did not have set up well at all. And it, you know, and it was a learning lesson. It was a huge gut punch for me because I had to basically swallow my pride and realize, one, I didn't set up my business or run it or set it up and run it the way that I thought I did, and in a way that could sustain itself even if I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, I had to realize that business was bankrupt at that point. Like it was done, you know,
Mm.
because we got to that point where it just we lost enough clients, we weren't generating new clients, the money coming in wasn't covering the bills that had to be paid, and we were ultimately bankrupt. So we went bankrupt in 2012 because of that injury that I sustained, you know, because I thought it was a bright idea to go back out and start racing again.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, how did you recover from like a 1.5 years of like a recovery time, going for like a bankruptcy for your business and then starting a new business? How was the mindset like? How did you motivate yourself and moving forward to start again from scratch?
That's a question that I get asked a lot, especially as I do different podcasts and talk with different
Yeah.
people and entrepreneurs, because it is not only being injured and laid up physically, but also financially, business wise, going through basically being ruined and losing everything that you
Yeah.
built with that one business. I had a wife at the time. I had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. For me, mentally was the hardest aspect of everything, is
Mm.
to just kind of get my mind back in a good place where I could actually think straight. I could create a plan. I could start implementing that plan. I could create ideas, because at that point I was so down. I was so depressed mentally, physically. It was a really, really tough time in my life. But ultimately, what actually ended up snapping me out of it, and it's funny, um, was I recovered physically. I was walking no problem, no long lasting effects. My wife, my daughter, and I went out to a local track for me just to ride, you know, just
Yeah.
to get back on the bike and ride. And it was the first time I was ever up back on that bike or on a bike after that injury, and had a good time, felt good on the bike, get off the bike, pack everything back into the trailer. We're driving back home, and my wife hands me a picture, and it's a picture that she took of my daughter pushing me in the wheelchair
Mm.
when I was recovering. And at
Right.
that point, you know, it was kind of like this snap to reality, like, holy cow, I have a lot more important things I need to be focused on than riding my motorcycle or being in my head, being depressed or worried. I just need to start taking action.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what did it for me. That snapped me out of that funk that I was in, got me motivated, me realizing I have much bigger things than just myself to worry about here. I have to support my family. And I need to get back on the horse. Now, luckily, the thing that got us through all that financially, you know, for our personal lives, was the real estate that I had invested in and bought previously. That was
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that sustained us as the business went bankrupt, as we had to kind of, you know, restart over, as I was laid up physically and injured. That's what got us through those times, paid our bills, allowed us to continue to eat. So at that point, that's kind of when I looked at things and went, okay, it makes sense to go all in on real estate at this point, because it's the one thing that has been consistent,
Yeah.
you know, from very early on all the way through that point, that got us through, that was reliable, that I knew that I was going to continue to make money on. Why not go all in on that and start building a business focused and centered around that? And so ultimately, that's what we did starting in 2014.
Yeah, that's a great story and incredible. Like that way you came back. It's not good easy for like everyone to come back like that. Like after
It's
going
not.
through like a two accident in a row in 10, 11 years
Right.
difference, and 1 and 5 years and you're going for like a depression and also losing your business. So I
Yep.
have like one question for you, so everyone can get inspiration and also like learn from you as well. What would you be doing differently? Uh, Before prior to like going for the accident and recovery, so you don't lose your business or your business doesn't go bankrupt, like
Sure.
still right now you don't know what the future looks like. you,
Right.
I don't hope for like you have another accident or
Right.
anything goes anything like that, but
Right.
in case something happened to your health or like your
Uh-huh.
family, and what would you done differently so your business right now you have like don't go bankrupt or like
Yeah.
it can run without you?
So that's a great question, and I think that's a lot of things. That's something that people ask a lot and they wonder about. And you know, for me, it's kind of like what advice would I give myself now, my younger self now looking back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, to me, it's about in that business that I ended up losing, the reason it wasn't sustainable when I wasn't there is because I didn't have the department set up to be able to be, self-functioning basically, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have leadership set up in a way where they could make the decisions. They knew the ins and outs of things. They could make the decisions to operate on a daily basis without me having to be there and kind of leading them and managing them. So for me, it's about making sure, and this should be in any business, no matter what size, is you surround yourself with people that are good at things that you're not,
Yeah.
right? And you give them the ability to manage and lead effectively. So many times, business owners and entrepreneurs, they try to hold on to as much control as they possibly can over every aspect of the business,
It's true.
right? The problem with that is that you end up losing control when you're not there. Should something happen, like it happened to me, right? I held on so tight because I wanted to control every single aspect of every department, whether it's the design department, the creative department, the client, relations department, the new business development department. I held on to so much control that I never released enough control to allow my department leaders and my managers to be able to make the decisions they need to make, they needed to be able to make to be able to function and operate without me being there. So as soon as I
Mm.
wasn't there, it's like no one knew what to do, no one knew what was going on, no one could make those decisions. And so there was a lot of tension and a lot of infighting and bickering based off of what people thought they should be doing, and then ultimately nothing ever got done. So to me, it's about really being comfortable and getting comfortable with, releasing some control, being able to delegate, and putting people in positions that can lead those different departments for you. So that, if you got injured and you were laid up for 6 months or a year, things are still running, without you being there every single day, things are still growing, money still coming in. And so for the new company that I have, that I started in 14, which is where we're and to today, I have department heads in every single department that have full autonomy to make the decisions because they know how I operate, they know how I want things done,
Mm.
and they're running those departments, they're making those decisions, and money, growth is still happening, money's still coming in, we're still acquiring properties, the cash flow is still coming in on a monthly basis, and there's processes and procedures that are implemented that happen whether I'm in the office, whether I'm here or not.
Yeah.
That in and of itself will prevent you from, will prevent from going bankrupt or having your business go out of business like it did to me.
Yeah.
That all of that. And then obviously financially, you have to make sure that you're not, that you're budgeting well, you're not spending on stupid things. You got to make sure you have a buffer there in the business and personally as well, which we did, but ultimately I was out for a year and a half and that just ended up
Mm.
catching up with itself. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's the best advice that I could give someone looking back. And it's the same advice I would give my younger self now if I could.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So interestingly, what's the number one lesson you have learned running your businesses for decades of experience you have, so no one can make the kind of mistakes? Obviously, the advice you've given, like, is there any kind of lesson, like a mistake you made previously, you think like someone can use when they're starting out their business from the very beginning?
So one of the biggest piece of advice I give people and tell people is what you start your business on, or the model or the plan that you start your business with, in 5 years from now, it's going to look
Hmm.
completely different, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
you have to be able to, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned and that I teach and tell people is you have to be able to pivot on the fly, right? Don't be so hard set in thinking it needs to be one way.
Mm.
Because if you get to the point where you're so hard-headed and you're so structured in that business, as you continue to grow and as things evolve, that you can't pivot on the fly when things change, ultimately you're going to limit your growth opportunity and potentially could put yourself out of business.
Yeah.
And let me kind of give you an example, right? So for us, starting in 2014, our primary focus here at Sim Capital was multifamily real estate, right? So apartment complexes, condo complexes, 50 units and up, was kind of our bread and butter.
Right.
And then COVID happened. And with COVID, everything was shut down. Pennsylvania was the only state out of all 50 in this country that deemed real estate non-essential. So we couldn't operate real estate. We couldn't buy any real estate. We couldn't sell any real estate because they wouldn't send a notary out to close a deal for us because we're in PA. And then our lovely government put a rent moratorium in place, which basically told all of our tenants, hey, if you don't want to pay rent, you don't have to. Now, initially it was if you can't afford to pay rent, you don't have to, and you cannot be evicted. But really, people took advantage of it, right? And that's just how people are. They saw an opportunity to not have to pay living expenses. They chose not to. And that was because of and they could get away with it because we by law could not evict someone.
Yeah.
So for us, I needed to find a way. What was another asset class for us that we could buy that could kind of give us a little bit of a risk hedge against that ever happening again, right? We didn't get rid of our multifamily by any means, and we still buy multifamily. But what's another asset class that we can buy that should another rent moratorium ever be put into place, we still know we're going to get paid by our tenants every single month. So what we did is we pivoted, and that's what I was talking about earlier. You have to look at what's in front of you and learn to be able to pivot and not just be so hard-headed and sticking with the same thing. We pivoted to a new asset class, which was affordable housing, because the affordable housing that we decided we were going to buy was all going to be paid by the government. So if the government wants to screw us on one end and basically say, hey, your tenants don't have to pay you rent and you can't evict them, okay, fine. We're just going to buy properties that you have to pay us on every single month, no matter what. And that's what we did. And so now we have a nice portfolio, and that's our focus moving forward right now. We have a nice portfolio across both asset classes. So when I was talking about earlier about, don't be so hard-headed and just sticking with what pivot in a way that's going to help you continue to accelerate your business, continue to grow. It may not be the same business model that you initially started on, but that's okay. That's why businesses grow. Like, look at Amazon. Amazon started as a book, an online wholesale book, book website, right? That's all they initially sold. Now their business is everything, right? They've completely pivoted away from just selling books, and that's not their primary business anymore. Their primary business is basically like an online, superstore, right? Where you can basically get anything. It's the same thing. You have to be able to pivot to where you believe the growth is going to be, that's going to allow you to sustain your business and ultimately grow. Time and time again, people get so set on what they founded their business on, the business model, that when they come up against a hard time or something that's negatively affecting them, they're not looking for solutions. They just double down and try to push through it. And that's not a way. That's not a way to do things by any means.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. But so we are coming to the end of this podcast episode. So it's been a great pleasure having you on the show, and it's been a great conversation with you. So those who's listening, if anyone wants to learn more about you or about your business, where's the best place to find you?
Yep. So it's real simple. Just head over to simcapital.com, SIMMcapital.com. My story's on there. More information about me is on there. More information about the company's on there as well. And I always invite people to reach out if they have any questions as well. We're always here. I'm always here to help.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So so thank you so much, Matt, coming to this podcast episode. I really appreciate it for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful new year. And thanks for coming again.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Great talking with you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you got some value from it and enjoyed our conversation. So if anyone wants to reach out to Matt, go visit his website and learn more about his work. And also, if you want to learn more about him, then you can do that as well. So until then, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.